So welcome everyone. So my name is Justin. I'm one of the tutors from the Department of Psychology. So welcome to HKU Information Day. So we are very happy to have all of you here. So we hope you have fun learning what we do here and also learn more about what psychology is. So this section is admission talk and the speaker is Professor CHEUNG. So Professor CHEUNG has been in the department for a very long time, very long time. So we have a lot of specialties in our department and specialties of psychology and specializing in vision science. So he's also the program director for the BPsych program. So let's pass time to Mr. CHEUNG.
Thank you, Justin. Can you hear me okay at the back? Okay. All right. So we have about an hour or so here. So try to spend the first, 30, 40 minutes introducing what psychology is. And a little bit about why, welcome first of all to the HKU campus and to our department. So the second part will be, well, if you're considering what to study, well, for the students here, what to study when you get into a university and where to study that. And hopefully I'll also introduce why you should consider doing psychology here at HKU. What's good about that. And then just a little bit of information. I won't be spending too much time on the factual information because you can always read those in our booklet. We got some booklet for you. So make sure you take one of those. And then after my sharing part, I'll invite the two our current students to join us, and they will share what they've learned and their experience at the HKU psychology program so far. So that's the plan for the next hour and so. All right. So that's my name, that's my name, and if you have questions, you're welcome to email me. That's my email address. And like what Justin mentioned, currently I'm the program director. So if you have questions about the program, you can ask me questions through email. All right. When people think about psychology, very often they may think, well, what? At least when I talk to people and I say I study psychology, I'm a professor in psychology, they would say, well, then I won't talk to you anymore because you're going to know what I'm thinking about. You're going to read my mind. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. But of course, psychology is not like that. Although, in fact, there are the research trying to see whether there are signals in the brain that we can detect and trying to get what people are thinking or imagining and so on. So there are, in fact, research studies going on trying to do that. But most of the time, when we think of psychology and how we think about psychology is not like mind reading. So what is psychology? Then perhaps sometimes you would think about what a typical psychologist would be like. Perhaps it would be someone talking to clients and trying to help the client to solve different kinds of questions or different kind of issues that they face during their daily life. Well, for one, I'm not that kind of psychologist. I don't do that. So what is psychology again? So that's sort of the first part of what I'm going to share. And for those, again, who are thinking about doing a psychology degree, you may, or for some of the parents in the audience, you may think, well, would it be really uncertain in terms of what you can do after you get a psychology degree? And so I'm going to touch on that a little bit and share what we've found in terms of looking at what our graduates have been doing after finishing the degree. Again, what is psychology? Very often, that's how movies and that's how the media portray what psychologists do. They ask the client to sit on the couch or lie down on the couch, and then the psychologist would be, psychotherapist would be sitting at the back, and trying to ask the client to share, to think about what's going on in their mind and so on. But again, is it really all psychology is about? And interestingly, in fact, I noticed this. I'm not sure did you notice this? I'm not sure how yeah, where they put that up. I came across that in IG. For those who have following the IG account, you may have come across that. And sorry for those who can read Chinese. I couldn't find the English version. I'm not sure why. It's pretty bad, but they got this basically saying that, well, depending on your MBTI type, you can plan your route in terms of where you visit on campus, what kind of programs that you can go into, and so on. In a moment, I would say, don't take it too seriously. So MBTI, have you heard about MBTI? Or have you done MBTI before? And again, well, that's the list. Well, by looking at the 4 letters of the HKU stuff, they sort of group that into 4 big categories and saying that perhaps that's how, according to this, you can plan your route today accordingly. MBTI. So what's that? For those who've taken that pretty well, you're pretty familiar with that. MBTI is basically saying that we can describe a person, individual's personality by looking at 4 things or 4 letters. And the first letter, of course, extroversion versus introversion, and then sensing versus intuition, and thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. And with different possible combinations, we got 16 different types of personality. Now is a question for you. Do you really believe that all of us, or all the people in the world, can be fitted into one of these 16 types? So that's MBTI. But it is so popular. It is very, very popular. Everyone talk to me, they mention, well, you're doing psychology, and tell, well, what's your MBTI type? And to be honest, I don't know, because I haven't done that before. Why? That goes back to how we should think about how we should understand personality. So MBTI is a tool that someone proposed that perhaps is helpful to look at one's or to measure one's personality. But in fact, well, in general, in terms of thinking about psychological characteristics or attributes and other things, there are different ways that we can talk about measuring them. One idea is that perhaps it's really like types, different groups, different categories, discrete types. So basically saying that, well, psychological attributes, in this case, personality, is like you can measure that by, again, putting people into different categories, just like gender. We have females, males, something like you have that. You are wearing glasses or you're not wearing glasses, things like that. So that's one way of thinking about attributes, is either or categories, types. Yet there are other ways, another way to think about different psychological attributes. That's why thinking about it as perhaps it's like continuous, it's a continuous scale. And examples of that will be, well, if you're referring to someone's height, well, it's not so correct to say, well, you're short, you're tall. No, you don't talk about that in terms of categories or types. You can talk about that as how they measure on a continuous scale. So there are different attributes, psychological attributes. Perhaps it's more like that. For example, intelligence would be one. And You won't just say, well, you're smart, you're not smart. It's not like that. You can measure someone's intelligence on a continuous scale. So there's these other idea that perhaps personality is more like that. We should talk about personality as something that we can measure on a continuous scale. And we say that's by thinking about personality as traits, not as types. And in fact, that's what we psychologists in the academic world would think about personality. Personality varies not in terms of types, but as a trait. In fact, it's people talk about, people in psychology, academic psychology talk about that very often. So this is a website. In fact, it's like a magazine. It's called Psychology Today. And you can just search. In fact, they have an article on the MBTI. MBTI stands for the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So basically, just in the article, the authors tell you what psychologists or how psychologists think about personality. So the reason why I would like to use this as an example is that very often there are many different ideas floating around about the human mind, about human behaviors, about psychology. People talk about that a lot, but what are the ideas that we can really trust, or we should really believe in, or we know that there are evidence supporting those ideas? And that's what we do in psychology, or basically in the study of psychology. When we study psychology, we try to get our students to learn how to evaluate different ideas out there. There are so many different ideas out there. People talk about psychology, talk about human behaviors, talk about human mind from different perspectives. Yet, we want our students to be able to evaluate those ideas critically by looking into whether there's enough scientific evidence supporting the different ideas. So that's what the study of psychology is about. It's not just by hearsay, not just by whether it's popular or not. We talk about science. We use scientific method to take a look at whether the ideas could be promoted or is well supported. All right, so that's one thing about psychology. Another thing about psychology is that sometimes people think about psychology as well. There are all these theories, and sometimes we may think the theories are not so interesting and not so relevant. So in the next, using the next two examples, I'm going to tell you that while psychology is interesting and also highly relevant to what we experience every day. So let me show you this video. I'm not sure whether you see what's going on. There are two pieces of paper of the same color. Depending on where it appears on the scene, in the scene, you will see that as of different shades of gray. So That's wow, that was like a video illustration of that, demonstration of that. I got just a picture pictorial one. So now when we look at A and B, if you would like me, I see that the two patches as having the same level of lightness. They're different. They're not different at all. They're the same. Just wanna again show that they are exactly the same and just put two bars next to them. Just to let you know that they are exactly the same. Now, if I put a polygon tags around that, all of a sudden you will see those two as having very different shades of gray, at least how you perceive that, just like that. Now you see A as being darker than B. Just in case you not convinced, let me go back. Now it's the two patches without the contacts. Now with the contacts. And well, in fact, let me put the two bar next to it. You see they are exactly the same. But if I take those two bars away, let me go back. And you see that as very different. All right. There is something that happens in your mind. So why is that? This is an illustration that I use a lot in one of my classes. It's about cognitive psychology. Of course, in cognitive psychology in particular, we try to understand mental processes, how things work. In particular, this is an example of how visual perception works. How do we see things, or how do we perceive the world? And this illustrates that in perception, it's not like we're just receiving information as how it's presented on, like in this case, on the display. That's just the beginning. It's also about how this information is being processed in our brain, in our mind. And of course, there are different theories trying to explain what's going on. And in this case, we know that the reason why we see A as being a darker part of the scene and B as a lighter part of the scene is because we have certain assumptions about what's going on here. We assume that there is a cylinder here, and because the light is coming from that direction and it casts shadows on here, and the shadow is part of our mind, how our mind understands the lightness. And that's how perception works. And that's part of the processes that we're trying to understand. And it's genuinely, I think, very interesting because there are all these puzzles that are still yet to be solved out there about how the human mind and behaviors work. And in the second highlight that we'd like to point out is when we study psychology, we try to get our students to think about how can we explain different phenomena that we come across in our everyday lives about human mind and behaviors. So the third example, well, did you get enough sleep last night? That's one of the questions that I always ask an audience like this. Sometimes, when we think about psychology, we think about psychology as something that's quite remote. It's how people come up with different theories trying to explain human mind and behaviors. Yet, in fact, psychology is about what we experience every day. And this is one of the examples. Sleep is one of the big topics that psychologists try to understand. Of course, there are different aspects. What's going on while someone is asleep, how sleep influences memory, how sleep quality may affect one's psychological well-being. So there are different things that we are trying to understand. So here I just want to highlight some of these. So here's some statistics from the US. And according to these statistics or this report, they mentioned that 35% of the US adults they didn't get enough sleep. I'm not sure, perhaps that percentage will be higher in Hong Kong. So going from the US to Hong Kong setting, in fact, right here, a couple of my colleagues in the department, they looked at the prevalence of insomnia. So how many people had insomnia, sleep problems out there in the population. And well, they looked at a particular time period. It was 2019. That's when COVID starting to break out, and also the social unrest. So there were a lot of different factors influencing this, and they were interested in what impact that might have on sleep quality and sleep duration, or sleep problems. So this is what they found that, well, you can take this of the average across different age groups. About 20% of the sample of those that they asked reported having sleep problems, insomnia. So sleep, again, is one of the examples that I always want to highlight that is highly relevant to what we experience every day. Well, for most of us, we sleep every day, every night. I have my students sleeping in my lectures. So sleep happens all the time. We study that in psychology. And why it's important? Well, because again, there are studies trying to translate what the kind of impact that sleep problems may have on the economy. Okay? So here, at those who sleep less than 7 hours a day are 30% more likely to be obese than those who sleep for 9 hours or more. So there are sleep may have consequences on health, physical health. In this case, body weight. So that's one. Of course, you can read some of these other statistics yourself. Here's another one, more relevant to students. So here they talk about GPA, grade point average. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that. In the US, so this US, in fact, this is from UCLA. So in the US, we use a system where when someone score an A in a class, then they got a grade point of 4, B, grade point of 3, and so on. Okay? And then after taking many different courses, then they would just look at the average. So you can see, well, someone getting a full score would be having a GPA of 4. And this is what they compared. Comparing students who slept 6 hours or less versus students who slept 9 hours or more. So they found that the average GPA was 2.74 for those who didn't get a lot of sleep, versus the group who slept a lot or more, who got an average of 3.24 GPA. It's quite a big difference. It's 0.5 difference, half a grade. So that's just to illustrate why sleeping is important, and again, by extension, why psychology is important, is relevant. That's what we try to understand. That's part of the phenomena that we try to understand in psychology. And so in psychology, we try to get our students to be able to understand, to see different phenomena that are highly relevant to everyday life. That's what psychology is about. So I just want to end that part. So again, this is sort of the textbook definition. In psychology, we try to understand human mind and behavior. And this is the slogan for our department, that we try to get our students to learn about psychology, to make a difference in people's life and society. Very quickly, why you should consider coming to us if you want to study psychology. First, about our university. Our university ranked first in Hong Kong, 11th in the world, okay, according to QS ranking. And not just about the university in general, but also about our department. HKU Psychology, again, is first in Hong Kong. There are other psychology departments in Hong Kong in the area, but we rank first in Hong Kong. We're third in Asia, 28th in the world. So what you may think, well, why does it matter in terms of looking at these rankings? First, one, the name. And that's not only it. Because the ranking reflects what kind of people that we can attract in terms of teachers or teaching staff, the kind of people that we can attract to come to us, to join our team. So that's one part of that. And also in terms of the graduate students, the student body that we can attract to come to us as well. So the whole experience for the undergraduates to learn about psychology is not, but often it's not just learned through courses, it's the whole experience. What kind of people that you come across when you go into the department. And that makes a difference whether we can attract strong and good people to join us, and ranking matters in that. All right, another part that's more about the characteristics of our program. First, we stress a lot on experiential learning. So all the students coming in, they will do either an internship or sometimes we call that field placement, meaning that, for example, very often we encourage a student to do that over the summer. So they will spend about 6 weeks going into different organizations to learn how they might be able to apply psychological knowledge in different settings. So experiential learning, not just from sitting in courses, lectures, but also going out and try to see how psychology can be applied. Research training is important to, well, again, being able to evaluate given ideas, different research findings out there. So having strong, solid research training is important. And also we have pretty flexible program structure, especially the way that we structure a program allows students to consider doing a second major or doing other minor programs as well. And that's important to strengthen the training of our students. Why? Again, why come to us? Of course, what kind of graduates we can produce, that's important. So here, the first number that I would like to highlight is many of our graduates, they after finishing the degree, they would try to find a job. And for those, 67% of them, they got a job. Some of them, they decided that they won't go into the job market right away. And 28% decided to go on for further studies. So meaning that counting towards those two groups, 95% of our graduates, they know what they want to do next. That's important. And in terms of those who went into the job market right away, 72% of them worked in psychology-related sectors. Education or social services, I count those two as more related to psychology. But in fact, there are other jobs in these other sectors will be relevant to psychology as well. And that's what I'm going to show in these next 3 slides. These are the actual kind of jobs that our graduates got last year. So graduates from psychology with the psychology degree last year. So some of them, they got a counselor job, some turned out to be a welfare worker and so on. But we also had graduates who decided to go into the business world, being a management trainee, being a trainee in different commercial sectors. And some of them, they try something very, very, very different. Even as a diamond grader associate, try to grade diamonds. So they're pretty diverse pathways that our graduates had in the past. And some of the companies or organizations where our graduates, again, they worked in all kinds of organizations. So this Sons and Daughters, I'm not sure whether you've heard of that, is an organization helping to fight against trafficking, children trafficking, okay? Sons and Daughters. But there are other organizations and companies as well. So very quickly, to conclude this part, introducing what psychology is about. Psychology is not about reading mind or mind reading, but yes, we try to study and understand mind and behaviors. Psychologists are not just about doing giving psychotherapy sessions, but we work in different settings, including, like me, I work in university settings doing research, teaching, and so on. And our graduates, just looking at the statistics, they work in very different sectors. And that the reason is, in fact, we try to make sure that our graduates are well equipped with different skills that will allow them to flourish in different sectors. So that's that first part of my sharing. So very quickly, how? Again, we got pretty detailed information in our booklet. So please take one of these to get more details about that. And I'm just going to focus on the JUPAS version because the non-JUPAS version very different exams and so on. All right, so that's our JUPAS code. We show that you remember that 6705. And we consider Band A applicants only. So if you want to come to us, please put us in your top 3, one of the top 3 choices, okay, in Band A. And we looked at the best 5 of your subjects, category A or C, and those who were taking M1 and M2, the math extension subjects, these subjects are can be included, can be considered as well, if because there will be 2 electives, if the other elective is either is a category A subject, so not just a language course. In terms of the requirements, again, you get those in the brochure, in the booklet. So these are just the minimum requirements. More important would be the score down here. So this is how we calculate the admission score for students taking the DSE. So for the subjects where you score 5 star, 5 2 stars, that gets converted into a score of 8.5. 5-star gets converted into a score of 7, 5 to 5.5. And then 4 is 4, 3 is 3. Okay. And then you just look at your best 5 and add the numbers up. And this is these are numbers from last year. Again, you got those numbers in one of the brochures. In the brochures, they rounded that up. So you saw that as 31 and 31. That's the actual number, 38.5. So that's the upper quartile, the median, and the lower quartile. Right. So that's how we did last year. So if you want to know, learn more about our program, this is a QR code that will bring you to our website. And this is a QR code that will bring you to the admission page for a program, right? So that's my sharing part. Very good. So I will now invite two of our current students to come forward, and then we'll just have them share the experience. All right. So today we have two of our students, Abby and Julie. So one of them, Abby, is in her third year, year 3 student. Julie is in her second year, like year 2 student. And they had different backgrounds in terms of the kind of exams that they took as well. So Abby took the DSE and Julie took the IB. So they got different experiences, backgrounds, and will coming in as well. So the first question that in fact, I asked them to think about that before. I want them to share with you is so after coming in, well, perhaps let me ask this question first. Why did you choose psychology? And perhaps why psychology here at HKU?
Okay, so starting with why I've chosen psychology, for me, I'm mainly interested in the study of human minds from a long time ago, and I've been reading books related to psychology ever since I was a child. So that has always been one of the major areas of interest to me personally. And it's also that I'm especially interested in areas related to mental health, and I would like to learn more about like different mental health issues and try to help others with my skills. So since that's what I want to do, I ended up choosing psychology. And why at HKU specifically? It's mainly because of course I consider the rankings, and since HKU has like one of the best psychology programs in Hong Kong, I put that as my first priority. But I'm also interested in like the research environment here at HKU, and I have also been to the info day, like obviously here. So during the info day, the seminars and the lectures, it actually gave me a very deep impression. So that became why I chose psychology at HKU.
So why I chose psychology now is because growing up, I've always been a pretty observant person and curious about why people behave in certain ways, which naturally led me to choose psychology because I wanted to satisfy my curiosity, understand why. And why I chose psychology at Hong Kong U is because, first of all, because of its high quality education and rank. And I really like that it has a very multidisciplinary approach. So you not only get to learn about various topics in psychology, but you also get to engage in hands-on experiences and internships as Professor before. And I think this is really important because you get to really apply what you've learned in class to real life situations, which can be really inspirational and motivate you in your study.
Very good, thank you. So another question that perhaps you can share is so perhaps before coming into the program, before you started learning about psychology here, you got some ideas about psychology. So just wanna have you share. So after being in the program for 2-3 years, what have you learned that perhaps is different from how you thought about psychology before?
Okay, so for me, one of the biggest thing that made an impression to me when I first came into the Hong Kong U 3 years ago is that how the psychology program actually has a very large emphasis on like the more scientific aspect of psychology, meaning that you have to do like scientific studies and experiments. You have to learn something about statistics, about how to conduct experiments and measure your results, which is kind of different from how I've used to expected it back in secondary school, because I used to think psychology as something with a lot of readings. And although that's also true, when you got into Hong Kong U and actually study the program, you realize that there's also a huge part on the more scientific background of psychology that you also have to go into. So I would suggest you to be aware that this is something that you have to learn in the future if you're interested in psychology.
So before I entered before I entered Bachelor of Psychology, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but after really learning about psychology, I became even more interested in the subject, and I'm just like really glad that I chose psychology because it really opens your eyes to how you view the world and people, and I feel like you start to understand people and become more compassionate towards others. And in terms of the program, I would say it's not overly rigorous. There's a good balance between your studies and activities outside of the program. So I'm currently in a leadership program outside of the leadership club outside of the program, which I think is really nice because you get to meet people outside of the program and communicate and act.
Good. So one of the things we mentioned is the flexibility that we have in the program. So we just want to see if you have ever already thought about doing a second major or a minor program, and why? How did you make that choice?
So I'm currently doing a second major in cognitive science, and I chose that because it's kind of related to psychology, and I'm planning to continue my studies after graduation in HKU. So I think that it'll be really helpful for me. And I also do think that is a nice thing to consider the option of having like a second major or having like several minors, especially since the course it actually gives us a lot of free credits that you can use to either enroll in courses that you're interested in, or you can use those credits for another major or minor. So I think it is good that the department offers this degree of flexibility, and I can try to learn more about things that will help me to further my studies in the future, which I really appreciate.
So I'm currently only majoring in psychology, but I do plan to minor in something else. My options are human resources, which is offered as a minor by the department. And the reason this is an option is because this would open doors to the corporate world. So in case one day I do want to work for a company, then I can do so. And counseling is also an option for me because I think this would be a really useful skill to have, especially if I want to pursue or go into the psychologist side.
So probably the last question that I have in mind is that so now we have different students sitting in the audience. So coming from like someone who's already gone through the process, do you have any advice for them if they are trying to explore and try to decide whether psychology is for them or whether HKU is for them? Do you have any advice for them?
Okay, so my advice at this stage, especially if you are considering whether you're into psychology, is to just explore more and try to learn more about the subject before making any choices. Especially since psychology as a discipline, there's a lot of different areas within that discipline, such as what the professor has been introduced, some personality psychology or some cognitive psychology, biological psychology. There's going to be a lot of areas for you to consider and many options for you to choose from. So my suggestion is that you can first think about whether you are interested in psychology as in general, you want to learn more about the mind, or if you're only interested in a single sub area about psychology. Because if you're only interested in a little bit about psychology, and when you're going to HKU and discover that you have to learn the other disciplines too, it might be a bit of a struggle, especially if your only interest is in a minor area, which you will not be learning very often. So I would suggest you to first think about that choice, and you also think about whether you are prepared or you are able to handle some teachings in statistic and in the more experimental part of psychology, because that will also be included in the curriculum, and it actually plays quite a major role since those are complementary courses. You may have to take them, so you have to have that knowledge if you're planning to do on psychology. But in general, I think that psychology at HKU is a very rewarding but challenging experience. So if you are really interested in psychology and you are prepared to learn more about the human mind, you want to know more about how people operate, understand why they behave in different circumstances, I think this can definitely be a first choice for you.
Yeah, so I think Abby said a lot of what I wanted to say. But to add on to her point, I think just show that if you're really interested in the subject and you really want to know why people behave in certain ways, and you want to turn your interest into a career option, then Hong Kong U Psychology would be a really great choice, because not only are you able to explore various topics within psychology, like as she's mentioned before, personality psychology or social psychology, you get to engage in these hands-on experiences, which is really fulfilling and meaningful.
Right, thank you. So I guess that's what we've prepared. And now we open the floor to see if you have questions that you'd like to ask. Not sure about they might be able to answer some questions if you have some questions for them, or if you have some questions about the program. So we'll see if there are any questions you would like to raise at this point. Yes. Right. So, we have yet to finalize the process. In most cases, we won't arrange an interview, but there are some special applications, some special considerations in which we may need to invite the applicants to come in for arrange a Zoom sometimes for the interview. But that may happen. If that's needed, it depends on the actual scenarios. For some of the special cases, in fact, the interviews may happen in April or May. Some of them may be later, so it varies. So that's I'm sorry that we don't have more concrete timeline, because it's not, we don't do that for everyone. It's on a case by case consideration. So that's one. Yeah. So is that yeah. Language, well, that would be English. Okay. So for those of you who think about, well, whether you should do a program or the social sciences program, so it's a very relevant question, that in the Bachelor of Social Sciences program, you can do a second major in psychology, but you cannot do a first major in psychology, which means if you go into Bachelor of Social Sciences, you will major in something, and then you can consider doing a second major in psychology as well. In fact, other bachelor programs, if their program allows, in terms of the number of credits that they have, other than fulfilling their first major requirements, they can also consider doing a second major with us as well. So if you want to do a first major in psychology, the Bachelor of Psychology program is the only option. You mean in BSc? We don't have any preference for what you take in terms of the elective. But like what you heard, math might be a good option. Sometimes some biology may help, but again, we don't have any preference. It's more for how, if you really want to study psychology, how to prepare yourself that way. But not in terms of having a higher chance of getting in. That's irrelevant.
So since I'm a former candidate of the HKDSC, I would say that although it is recommended for you to have some mathematical skills or some science skill, especially in biology, since you will learn about biology later when you are in the program, it's not a must. And for me personally, I've studied history, geology, and economy back when I was preparing for the HKDSE, you can see none of it has like a very concrete relation to psychology. So as long as you are interested in the program and you are prepared to learn more when you're getting to university, it should be fine.
The question is about what, in terms of further studies, what are options? What are those options out there? In fact, I think in our brochure, we do have a list of some examples that some of our students, some of our graduates would consider. Someone mentioned about clinical psychology and educational psychology. Yes, those are master level programs, Master of Social Sciences. In our department, we offer those programs as Master of Social Sciences programs. So those are very often some of our graduates would consider. So yeah, so this will be some options. Some of our graduates will consider doing counseling degree afterwards. But there are also other pathways as well. In fact, some may consider even doing something different, like going into law, doing a JD as well. So it's a wide range of options. In terms of the statistics that we have seen, yes, most of our students, most of our graduates, for those who went on to further studies, most of them, they went on to what we call a top postgraduate program. It will be like what I mentioned, Master of Social Sciences in different areas. So that would be part of the top postgraduate programs. But we also have some of our graduates going into a research program, research postgraduate programs. Those will be like MPhil degree or PhD degree. And those will be basically for those who are interested in doing academic research, then they would receive further training in research. And so they would go into those camps. In terms of we didn't mention a lot, but yes, one of the highlights of our program, undergraduate program here is all of our students would need to fulfill a requirement that we call global citizenship. Many of our students would do that. We would do that by doing an exchange somewhere else. In terms of the places they go, they go everywhere. Some of them they've done their exchange study in Europe, different parts of Europe, in North America, in the US, in Canada. Some of them they've done that in Australia, and some of them they've done that in South Korea, Japan, mainland. So really all over the place. So I'm not sure that. Yeah. So yeah. So basically through the university, they have different agreements with different universities to arrange these exchange programs. So we do have pretty long list of options or choices for the students to consider. Right. So of course, those will be questions more for, well, if we attend, we do have like information sections for clinical psychology programs and educational psychology programs. But a quick note is that, in fact, in many cases, those programs would be admitting students not directly from an undergraduate training. for very practical reasons, they would look for maturity in the applicant. So very often they would finish their undergraduate study, they will work for some time, and then they would apply again. So that's the more likely scenario. But there were also cases where students got into those kind of programs right after they finishing the undergraduate program, but that's not as often seen. So in terms of the quota, I don't remember, but I think for clinical psychology program, I think we have about 20-25 per year in terms of cohort size. And in terms of education psychology, I think we have about 25-30 every other year. Remember, I think that number. That's sort of the roughly. The question is, do we have any Chinese language requirements for admission? The answer is no, we don't have Chinese language requirements. But of course, after coming in, there are different Chinese courses that our students will need to take. But they are different for Chinese speaking students versus non-Chinese speaking students. But in terms of getting in terms of requirements, we have Chinese requirements. All right, so I guess that concludes our session here. For those with questions, feel free to come up and talk to us. And thank you for coming. And make sure you stop by our department on the 6th floor, and also the 11th floor. We have those sessions where we have our CP, EP students to talk to you. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.